Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom Bracha and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Shabbos Daf Vav. We're in Hamid Bay's 6 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. Hamoitzi mechanus leplatya, if one carries out an item from a chanus, a store which is Rishus HaYachid, he does the akira in the Rishus HaYachid, and he carries it out leplatya, to a large plaza, which is a Rishus HaRabim. But what's unique about this case is that he did a derech stav. He carried through an area called stav, which is an area which contains these low benches where the merchants sit in front of their stores and converse and socialize. So this area has a din of a Carmelis. It's neither a Rishus HaYachid because it's not enclosed. It's not a Rishus HaRabim because it's not accessed by the general public. The general traffic doesn't pass through here. So it has a din of a Carmelis, which is a Rishus Rabbanan. However, in Torah, there's no such thing as a Carmelis. This area is a Makom P'tur, an exempt area. It has no status. So a person who carried through a stuff, he did the Akira in Rishus HaYachid, followed by a Hanocha in Rishus HaRabim, but he traversed through this Carmelis. What is the din? Does this Rishus intervene and interrupt the Masa Haitzah? Does it terminate the Akira by passing through this Makom P'tur? Says the Brisa, no. Even in this case, he is Chayav. We consider it to be a full-fledged Masa Haitzah, and he's Chayav. Since he did the Akira in Rishus HaYachid, with the Hanach and Rishus HaRabim, it's irrelevant of whether or not he passed through a Carmelis. As long as he didn't do the Hanach and the Carmelis, he didn't stop there to rest, he continued walking through it, so it's considered to be one continuous, uninterrupted Melechas Haitzah. So this is the Shita of the Tanna Kama. Uben Azai Poiter. Ben Azai says, no, he's Potter. Why? Because the Stav, which is a Carmelis, interrupts the Masa Malacha, and it's considered as though he did Hanacha in the Carmelis, and therefore he is Potter. And Akira and Rishus HaYachid and Hanacha and a Carmelis is not considered a Malacha min HaTorah, and therefore he's Potter. Explains the Gemara. Bishleima ben Azai kasavar. We understand Ben Azai's opinion is Mahalach ka'omed dami. When a person walks, it is tantamount to having stood in place. Rashi explains that every time he lands his foot, it's considered like an hanocha. Every time he lifts his foot again, it's like an akira. So if he walks, for instance, 10 steps, it's as though he made 10 hanochas and 10 akiras. Therefore, according to Ben Azai, if he merely walks through the stub, which is a Carmelis, it's considered as though he stood in his place, as though he rested there, as though he did hanacha, and it interrupts the Melechas Haitzah, and therefore he is Potter. However, according to the Rabbanon, Ela Rabbanon Nihi Nami de Kasavri. Certainly, apparently they hold Malach Lav Ka'omed Dami. When a person walks, it's not tantamount to standing in place. It's not considered as though he rested and did hanacha. Therefore, it is not considered a hanacha and a Carmelis. However, says the Gemara, still in all, where do we find such a precedent for such a concept that when a person does an akira in Rishus HaYachid and hanacha in Rishus HaRabim, but the malacha is there's an intervention here. It became interrupted through this Carmelis, which min HaTorah is a Makom P'tur. Where do we find a precedent to this type of chiyuv? Perhaps Melechas Haitzah is only if it's a direct carrying a continuous malacha from Rishus HaYachid directly into Rishus HaRabim, or vice versa, without any intervention. Says the Gemara, El Rabbanan Hi Nami de Kasavri Mahalach Lav Ka'omed Dami. Hey Chash Dachna Kai Gavna de Chayiv. Where do we find a precedent for this concept of Haitzah? Says the Gemara, Rav Safra, Amar Rav Ame, Amar Rav Yechon. I'll show you an example. I'll give you a precedent to this concept. Midi dehava. It can be compared to the following halacha. Midi dehava. It is equivalent to the case of ha'mavir chevet b'Rishus HaRabim. If one carries an item 4 ametz in Rishus HaRabim, we know that carrying an item 4 ametz in Rishus HaRabim is called the Melechas Ha'avara, which is a version of Melechas Haitzah. So if one carries an item past 4 ametz, he does the akira in Rishus HaRabim, walks, let's say 10 ametz in Rishus HaRabim. He's already passed the minimum shir of 4 ametz required for Melechas Ha'avara in Rishus HaRabim. She's already at Amma number 10. Says the Gemara, Hasam, Lav Afagav, even though the kama denokhle be'azl. As long as he's continuously walking with this item, pater. He's still pater as long as he hasn't made a hanacha. Nevertheless, when he chooses to do so, ki manach lechayev, when he chooses to finally make the hanacha at Amr number 10, that makes him chayev. So although up until that point he was pater because he hasn't yet made a hanacha, nevertheless, once he chooses and decides to complete the malacha by resting the item on the ground, he is chayev. So we see this type of concept. Although in between the akira and the hanacha, there was a point in time which was considered to be pater, a time which was exempt, because he wasn't yet chayiv while he was walking through the Rishus Harab until he decided to put down the item. Nevertheless, this doesn't make a termination. This doesn't interrupt the malacha, and he is still chayiv. It's considered to be one continuous malacha, even though there was an aspect of exemption of tur that came in between. Says the Marachanami, Loishna, here too in our case, although there is the Carmelis, which is coming in between the Akira and Hanacha, which is a Malkum Tur, nevertheless, this doesn't interfere with the Melechas Eitzah. We merely look at the Akira, which was in Rishus HaYachid, and followed by the Hanacha and Rishus HaRabim, and it's considered to be one continuous Malacha and Yischayev. Says the Gemara, how can you compare the two things? Midami! How do you compare the two things? It's not similar. Hasam, in that case, when he's carrying an item through Rishus HaRabim, and he's walking and walking until he gets to Amar number 10, number 20, it's his prerogative, it's his decision. If he decides, if he so chooses to rest the item anywhere after Amar number 4, Amar number 5, Amar number 6, he chooses to put down the item, he can be chayiv. So every one of those amas carries a potential chiyuv. It's a makam chiyuv. The definition of that makam is still a makam chiyuv, even though he has chosen to wait with his hanacha. But that doesn't determine the definition of the makam. The makam is still a makam chiyuv. It carries a potential chiyuv if he so chooses to place the item on the floor. Therefore, it doesn't have the status of a makam tur, and it can't intervene into his malacha. It can't terminate the akira. It's considered to be one continuous ma'asa malacha, because he hasn't passed through an exempt rishus, a domain which is a makam tur, like over here in our case, imanach lebestov makam turu. If he so chooses to place the item, to rest the item in this makam stuff, which he's walking through, which is a carmelis, which in our Torah is considered to be a makam tur, if he so chooses to put it down there, he's pater. So therefore, this is a bona fide makam tur. It's a domain which carries an exemption, and certainly this will intervene and interrupt the ma'aseh haitzah, so that he cannot be chayiv any longer. You can't compare it to that case. Says Ella, I'll find you another precedent. Let's compare it to the following case. Midi dahava. It could be equated to the following case: Amaber chayfetz mitchilas dal l'seiv dal. If one carries an item in Rishus Harabim for a distance of 4 amas, no more than 4 amas. Now, if he so chooses to put it down at Amber number 2, at Amber number 3, certainly he'll be pater, because he hadn't carried it for a continuous 4 amas, which is the minimal sheer requirement for the malacha of avara. So in that case, says the Gemara, hasam lav afagav. Even though the manach lebesoich dal amas pater, if he so chooses to place the item down on the ground before having reached the sheer of 4 amas, he's still at Amber number 2, and he so chooses to place the item on the floor, make a hanacha, he'll be pater. There's no potential of chiyuv within those 4 amas. He needs to carry at least 4 amas, and only then place it on the ground. Nevertheless, although he traverses this section which only carries a potential for ptur, nevertheless, once he completes the section, he passes 4 amas. Ki manach lebesoiv dal amas is chayiv. So evidently, even though there's an area which carries the halacha of ptur, which is considered to be a domain of ptur, because within 4 amas there's no potential for chiyuv. So evidently we see that a makam ptur cannot intervene and interrupt and invalidate the malach of eitzah. Here too, says the Marachanami regarding a stav, even though there's a carmelis coming in the way, in between the akir and hanacha leishna, it is no different than there, and certainly it doesn't interfere with the malach of eitzah. Says once again, how do you compare the two items? How do you compare the two cases? Midami. Hasam legabe the high gaver makam turu. You're right. With relation to this person, in regard to this person who's merely carrying the chayfetz for 4 amas, in regard to him, anywhere up to 4 amas is like a makam tur. If he places it down on the ground at amma number 2, amma number 3, he invalidates his masa itzah. But lekuli amma, with regard to everybody else, it is not so. Makam chiyavu. This area up until 4 amas is considered to be a makam chiyav for everybody else. For the person that's holding already at amma number 5, he can certainly place it right here, and he'll be chayiv. So this area, even though for this person it's considered to be amma number 2 and is a makam ptur, but that doesn't define and determine the status of this place, because for everybody else, this place is certainly considered to be a makam chiyav. For example, for the other person who is already holding at amma number 5, he's at this point. But for him, it's already his 5th amma. For him, it's certainly considered to be a makam chiyav. So the place is not considered to be a makam tur for kuli amma, and therefore, it certainly can't be considered to be a makam tur for this person as well. Because the nature, the status of this makam is still makam chiyav. However, in our case, hacha, which is a karmelis, l'kuli amma, makam tur for everybody. For the general public, it is also considered to be a makam tur. Therefore, since it's universally considered a makam ptur, perhaps it does create an intervention and it nullifies his masa hitzah. So where do you find a precedent for this concept? That although his malachas hitzah was interrupted with a makam ptur, nevertheless it's considered to be a continuous masa hitzah and he could be chayv. Says the Gemara, Ella, I'll give you a different precedent for this halacha. Let's prove it from the following halacha. Midi dehava. Let's compare it to the following case. Amoitzi mishus hayachal l'shus harabim. One carries an item out from the rishus hayachal out to the rishus harabim, but he traverses derech tzidei rishus harabim. He goes through an area called tzidei rishus harabim. Rashi describes this as being an area where the kaisel chatzar, the dividing wall, dividing the courtyard and the rishus harabim, collapsed. So in the place of the collapsed wall, that is considered to be tzidei rishus harabim. According to the Chachamim, that place is called a karmelis. Says the Gemara, Hasam over there, Lav afagav, the manachle. If this person who's traveling, who's carrying an item from the Rishus HaYachad through this area of Tzidei Rishus Harabim, which is a karmelis, out to the Rishus Harabim. Now, although, if he so chooses, to make hanacha right there on the Tzidei Rishus Harabim, he'll be pater, because he did that kira in the Rishus HaYachad, and the hanacha on a karmelis. Hasam over there, says the Gemara, Lafal Gav, even though the Yimanach Le'asidr Shisuram Potter, nevertheless, if he chooses to carry on and continue to the Shisuram and place it in Shisuram, what will be the halacha? Chayiv is chayiv. So apparently we consider it to be one continuous Maseh Yatzah. Since the Akira was in Shusayachet and Hanacha in Shisuram, although he traversed through a Tzidei Rishus Harabim, which is a karmelis, which in Torah is a makam ptur. Nevertheless, it doesn't interfere, it doesn't intervene, it doesn't interrupt the melachas haitzah and his chayiv. Says the Gemara Chanami, in our case, where he walks through a makam stav, lo yishno, it's no different than his chayiv. Says, how do we know indeed that that's true? That if a person carries through a Tzidei Rishus Harabim, his chayiv. Says Tosfos, yesh leimar, the derech bayis sheyesh lefanov tzdadim. It is the regular common occurrence that a home has in front of it these areas which are called Tzidei Rishus Harabim, where the general traffic doesn't access. V'chein hoyi mistama b'mishkan, and apparently in the Mishkan it also had the same type of phenomenon. So therefore, since in the Mishkan we find that although the word tzdadim there, nevertheless it was considered to be a melacha beitzah when it's carried through the tzdadim. So the Gemara concludes this must be the halacha elsewhere as well. So in any case, this serves as a precedent for our chiddush. Even if one has to walk through a makam tur, it doesn't interfere, and it's considered to be a full-fledged melachas haitzah. Says the Gemara, Maskal Papa challenged this precedent, this raya, this comparison. Hanichal Rabbana, all works well according to Rabbana, the Amri Tzidei Rishus Harabim, Lav Rishus Harabim Dami, because they consider this area of Tzadim like a karmelis. Therefore, you have a good raya to this concept. Ela Rabbi Lezer. The Omar Tzidei Rishus Harabim, Rishus Harabim Dami. It's actually a machlokes. Rabbi Lezer holds even Tzidei Rishus Rabbim have a status of a full-fledged Rishus Rabbim? If so, you have no precedent for this type of concept. When a person carries from the Rishus HaYachid through the Tzdadim out to Rishus Rabbim, you know why he's chayiv? Because the Tzdadim also have a din of Rishus Rabbim. Ma'ikal Meimar. If so, you have no raya, have no precedent for the concept of carrying through a Makam Tur. Amalei Rav Acha B'Rei Rav Ika. Eimer de Shamas l'Rab Lezer. When did Rab Lezer say his halacha, his opinion, that Tzdadim have a din of Rishus Rabbim? Eimer de Shamas l'Rab Lezer de Amar Tzidei Rishus Rabbim Rishus Rabbim Dami. Heicha, it's only the leka chifufi, when there are no obstructions there hampering the flow of traffic, and therefore according to Rab Lezer, since it's fully accessible, has a din of Rishus Rabbim. But in the case of heicha, the ika chifufi, when there are obstructions present there which hamper the flow of traffic, certainly even according to Rab Lezer, it will not have the status of Rishus Rabbim, but rather of a karmelis. Heicha the leka chifufi mishamasle. Does then Rab Lezer apply his opinion there as well? Certainly not. It certainly has a din of a karmelis. Hilkach, if so, laha damya. If so, we'll compare our case of stav to the case of one who carries through the Tzidei Rishus Rabbim that features chifufe, obstructions, which certainly has a din of a karmelis according to all. And since over there we see that he's chayiv, here too in our case he'll be chayiv as well. Amar Yochanan u'moide ben Azai b'zayrik. Although we mentioned earlier that according to Ben Azai, if one walks through, he merely walks through a stav, the amida, the halicha is considered to be mahalach ka'omed. It's as though he rested the item there, and therefore it is hanacha and a karmelis, and he is potter. That's only because he walked. But if he should throw the item from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus Rabbim through the airspace of a karmelis, certainly in that case there was no hanacha in the karmelis, and he's chayiv. Tani nami hachi. We learned a brisa. Similarly, hamoitzi mechanus leplatia. If one carries an item from a chanus, which is shayachid, out to the platia, which is a rabbin, derech stuff through the stuff, chayiv is chayiv. Because this is following the shita that chachamim who hold that merely walking does not constitute hanacha. Therefore, it's a continuous malach and is chayiv. Echad hamoitzi. This halach will apply to one who carries an item out from the shayachid to the rabbin. Echad hamachnes. The same in reverse. He brings in an item from the platia to the chanus. Same thing regarding throwing an item through the stuff, or he passes it through the stuff. This is the sheet of the Tanakama. Ben Az Omer, there's a difference. A difference between ha-moished and ha-machnes potter. If one carries an item with him, he walks through the stuff, either he's moitzi from Shayachot to Sarabim, or in the reverse, he's potter, because ma'alach is ka'imedami. However, ha-moished v'ha-zoyrek. But if he passes and throws through the stuff, in that case there was no hanacha whatsoever, and certainly he's chayav, because there's a malacha that was done by doing an akira in one rishus and hanacha in the other rishus. So in conclusion, according to Ben Azai, ma'alach ka'imedami, if he walks through the stuff, it is as though he was meniach in the stuff, and he is potter, because he did an akira in Shusayachid and hanacha in Shusarabim, in Karmelis. According to the Tanakama, mahalach is lav ka'imedami. Therefore, it's one continuous maaseh. We view the akira in the Shusayachid together with the hanacha and Shusarabim as one continuous act, one continuous maaseh, and we're not concerned about the fact that it was intervened with a stav. He traversed through a makam tur on the way to Shusarabim. It does not terminate the maaseh hatzah, and is considered to be a full-fledged malach and is chayiv. The Gemara was looking for a precedent to this concept. Where do we find a similar idea? First, the Gemara suggested that the raya will be from every time that a person is mavir a chayfet in Shusarabim, and he's walking past 4 amas. So he's pater until he decides to put it down, to do hanacha. So we see that although there is a situation of ptur, he's exempt until he decides to do hanacha. Nevertheless, that point in time of exemption doesn't interrupt the melechas ha'avara, and he's still chayiv when he decides to finally put it down. The Gemara negated that raya. The Gemara proceeded with another raya. Person is maver 4 amas in Shusarabim. Within those 4 amas, if he chooses to lay the item on the floor, he'll be pater. It's a makam ptur. Therefore, we see that even if he walks through an area which is a makam ptur, it doesn't interrupt, it doesn't interfere with his melechas ha'avara. The Gemara negated that as well, and the Gemara brought a raya from the person who is maver through, he traverses through its Tzidei Rishus Harabim. The Gemara said it's speaking about perhaps a case where there are chifufe obstructions where, according to all shittas, it has the status of Tzidei Rishus Harabim. Nevertheless, we find that he is chayiv. Here too, in our case, although there's a makam tur in between the akira and the hanacha, nevertheless, we view it as one continuous, uninterrupted masa hoitzah, and he is chayiv. Continues the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, we learned on the Brayse, Dalad Rishuyas l'Shabbos. There are 4 separate Rishuyas, there are 4 categories of domains regarding the Melecha of Hitzah on Shabbos. Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, V'Karmelis, U'Makim P'tur. As the Brayse will elaborate. Ve'ezi Rishus HaYachid, what is the definition of a Rishus HaYachid, a private domain? Says the Brayse, Charitz, a ditch. Shu Amak Yud, which is deep 10 tfachim, V'Rachav Dalad, and wide 4 tfachim. It is 4 by 4 with a depth of 10, since it's a self-contained area with the dimensions of 10 deep and 4 wide. That indeed is Rishus HaYachid. V'chein Geder, a stone wall, Shu Gavoya Yud, which is 10 tfachim high, V'Rachav Dalad, so the surface on top of the wall is 10 tfachim removed from the earth, from the ground, from Rishus Harabim, and it contains an area which is 4 by 4 tfachim. Zui Rishus HaYachid Gemura. This is considered to be a bona fide, complete Rishus HaYachid. Now, certainly a flat area, a flat surface, which is surrounded by bechitzas, by partitions, which are 10 tfachim high, and the surface has the dimensions of 4 by 4. Certainly, that is considered to be Rishus HaYachid. The Brayse chooses to focus on these 2 cases, which contain an added element of chiddush. There's somewhat of a novelty. Even a ditch down below or the top of a fence is also considered to be Rishus HaYachid. Now, why is the top of the fence considered to be Rishus HaYachid? Explains Rashi. We apply the concept of good achis, a good asik mechitzasa. We take these sides, we view the sides of the fence as if they continue upward, and they provide an enclosure on the area, on the surface, on top of the wall as well. So the top surface is viewed as though it is contained within mechitzas, and therefore it is a self-contained area which has a status of Rishus HaYachid. Reb Chaim Soloveitchik explains a little bit of a different explanation, that the point, the concept of Rishus HaYachid is that it's a self-contained area detached from the Rishus Harabim. The mechitzas surrounding Rishus HaYachid, they affect a detachment from the surrounding environment, from the Rishus Harabim. Says Reb Chaim Brisker, just as a place which is contained, which is surrounded by mechitzas, is considered to be detached from Rishus Harabim, so too the surface area on top of a gather, on top of a stone wall, it's also considered to be Rishus Harabim because it's detached, it's elevated, a sheer of 10 tfachim off the ground. So, as a result of this significant detachment from Rishus Harabim, it also attains, this too acquires the status of a self-contained area of a Rishus HaYachid. Continues the Brayse, Ve'ezi Rishus Harabim. What is the definition of a public domain? Sratya, a highway, uplatya, a large plaza, uplatya gedola, umavois, amafaloshin, wide city streets that are open-ended, and they're open. They attach to the highway or to the plaza. Zohi Rishus Harabim Gemura. This indeed is a bona fide, complete Rishus Harabim. What is the halacha? Ein moitzin Rishus HaYachid zu Rishus Harabim zu. One may not carry from this Rishus HaYachid Rishus Harabim. Ve'ein machnisin Rishus Harabim zu Rishus HaYachid zu. One cannot bring in an item from this type of Rishus Harabim to this type of Rishus HaYachid. Ve'ein moitzin ve'hichnis b'shoigeg chayav chatos b'meizid onish koris v'niskal. If he received no asra, no warning from Adam, then he gets koris. B'dei Shamayim, his days are shortened. Or if he receives asra from the witnesses, then he's liable for skila, to be put to death by stoning through bezin. So this in summary is the synopsis of Rishus HaYachid and Rishus Harabim. Continues the Brayse. What about a Carmelis? What about a Makam Tur? Aval, Yom, a sea, Ubika, an open area full of fields, Vistavanis, this area that has the low benches in front of these stores. Carmelis, the Gemara will explain what exactly is referenced with the word Carmelis. So all these are actually Carmelis. They are devoid of the status of Rishus HaYachid or the status of a full-fledged Rishus Harabim. As the Rambam explains, the word Carmelis is a spin-off of the word armala. An almana in Aramaic is called armalta. So Carmelis is like an almana who doesn't have the standard status of a woman. She's neither single prior to marriage nor is she married. So she's devoid of any of these common statuses. A Carmelis as well is devoid of any defined status. It's not a Rosh Hashanah, it's not a Rosh Hashanah. Why? Says Rashi, because it's not meant to be accessed by the general public, and at the same time, it's not a self-contained area. It's not surrounded by mechitzes. So it's neither this, neither that. Eino lo k'shus harabim, v'lo k'shus hayachid. It has elements of both. It is accessed somewhat by Rabim, although it is not meant lihiluch Rabim, but nevertheless it doesn't have the status of a shayachid. It's not a self-contained area. Potentially it is accessible to the Rabim, although practically they don't walk there. Therefore, it has an element of Rosh Hashanah. At the same time, it has an element of Rosh Hashanah as well, because it is not accessed by main traffic, by the general public. So it's neither this, neither that, and it has a din of a Rishus Karmelis Midrabanan, who gave it all the halachas. They gave it the stringencies of both Rishuyos, of Rosh Hashanah as well as Rishus Harabim, on account of the fact that it contains both elements. And what is the halacha of a Karmelis? We cannot carry within the Karmelis 4 amas as din of Rishus Harabim, because it resembles Rishus Harabim somewhat. But if he carries within the Karmelis, he's potter. One may not carry out from the Karmelis to Rishus Harabim because it has similarities to Rishus Hayachid. Therefore, lest one confuse it with Rishus Hayachid and come to allow carrying from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, therefore the Chachamim prohibited carrying from the Karmelis to Rishus Harabim. The same thing with the reverse. And one may not bring in an item from Rishus Hayachid to the Karmelis, because once again the Karmelis has resemblance to Rishus Harabim. Therefore, lest one confuse the Rishus Harabim and allow carrying from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, therefore the Chacham prohibited carrying from Rishus Hayachid to a Karmelis. The same thing in the reverse. One may not carry from the Karmelis to Rishus Hayachid because the Karmelis looks like Rishus Harabim. But he's potter. Continues the Brisa. So we discuss Rishus Hayachid, we discuss Rishus Harabim, we discuss Karmelis. What about Chatzei Rishus Harabim? Communal courtyards, which are completely enclosed by mechitzes. They have a din of Rishus Hayachid. The same thing regarding Mevois, She'einam Nefaloshin. These alleyways which are not open-ended, they're not attached. They don't lead into Rishus Harabim. They are Einam Nefaloshin. They are enclosed on 3 sides, and the 4th side is indeed open to Rishus Harabim, but since they're enclosed from all 3 sides, they have a din of Rishus Hayachid. However, Midrabanan, there's a prohibition in carrying in these areas as well, as we will learn Be'ez Hashem Mesechus Erevin, since it's a shared area, it's a shared access area. It is used by the inhabitants of the Chatzeres, and therefore there's an issa to carry there unless they do an Erev. And by doing so, they pool their resources, they share the bread, and by doing so, they merge their ownership, so to speak, and that allows them to carry in this area as well. So the halacha is irvu mutar, if they do an erev, then they're allowed. Lo irvu, if they don't make the erev, then they are prohibited asurim. But this is only an issa d'rabban, because technically speaking, these are enclosed areas which have the full status of Rishus Hayachid. Finally, says the Brisa, what is a mokim patur, the 4th category mentioned earlier? This is an area which doesn't have any status whatsoever. It is batal. It is nullified to the Rishus, which is right near it. Rashi explains, it's speaking about a place which doesn't have a dimension of 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. It is an insignificant area, therefore it's a makam tur, and one may carry and transfer an item from the makam tur to wherever he wants, to Rishus Hayachid or Rishus Harabim. As the Brisa explains, Adam oymad al eskufa, one can stand on the skupa, which is a threshold in front of the house, a raised threshold, which is not Rachav Dal, which is a din of a Makam Tur. And what can he do there? He can take from the Balabayis, Noitul Balabayis, V'Noisin Loi. He can transfer an item from the Balabayis, who is in Rishus Hayachid, And in the reverse as well, he can take an item from the Makam Tur, from the Skupa, and give it to the Balabais in the Rosh Hashanah. Noitel Ma'ani v'Naisin. He can turn around and hand an item to the Ani, the poor man who's standing in Rosh Hashanah. Noitel Ma'ani, he can take an item from the Ani v'Naisin, and as well he can hand him an item because he's standing in a Makam Tur. U'bavad is the Brisa provided Shlo Yitum Ba'abayis v'Naisin Lani. He shouldn't do the following. He shouldn't transfer an item, relay an item from the Balabayis who's in Rosh Hashanah and relay it over to the Ani who's in Rosh Hashanah. Or in the reverse, Me'ani v'Naisin Balabayis. He shouldn't take an item from the Ani who's standing outside Rosh Hashanah and transfer it over to the Balabayis in Rosh Hashanah. Why is that? Says Rashi, the mezalzel b'Yisur Shabbos l'chatchila. Because this is a zilzal, a degradation of Yisur Shabbos, because although technically the transferring of the item is taking place in two stages, where technically speaking each one does not have the status of a malacha beitzah. Nevertheless, since this activity ends up resulting in an item being transferred from Rosh Hashanah over to Rosh Hashanah or the reverse, this is a zilzal, a degradation, a bizoyin to Yisur Shabbos, and one may not do so. But if he indeed followed through, he transferred an item from Rosh Hashanah over to Rosh and through the Makam Tur, then all three individuals, the Baal Bayis, the Ani, and the person standing on their skupa, certainly are all patur. Concludes the Brisa, Acherim Oimrim, is skupa mishameshes beis rishuyos. The Gemara later will explain exactly the definition of this halacha, that the skupa, this threshold, can serve potentially as two domains. When the doorway to the home is open, then the skupa has the din of Rosh Hashanah. Pesach Nol, if the door is locked, then the skupa has the din kalachutz of outside. Finally, says the Brisa, if this threshold was high 10, wide 4, Hareza Rishus La'atzma has its own status as a Rishus La'atzma. The Gemara later on will elaborate and explain what exactly this means. So in summary, we have 4 categories. Arba Rishus L'Shabbos, we have Rishus Hayachat, a private domain, for instance, a Charitz, a ditch, which is deep 10 and wide 4. We have a Geder Gavoya Yud B'Rachav Dalad, a wall, which is high 10 and the surface is wide 4. That is the Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is either a Sratya highway, a Plati G'doy, a large plaza, or those roadways which are open and access the highway or the large plaza. So they're open-ended streets that lead into these Rosh Hashanah. A Carmelis is an area which is devoid of any status min HaTorah. For instance, a Yam, a Bika, and a Carmelis, or a Stevanis. Finally, what is a Makam P'tur? That is a skupa, a threshold, which is not Rochav Dalad, therefore it's an insignificant area, and it is Batal, Eitzel Rosh Hashanah, V'Eitzel Rosh Hashanah, and one may indeed carry from the Makam P'tur over to the Rosh Hashanah or to the Rosh Hashanah. Omar Mar, we learned, Zoyi Rosh Hashanah. The Brisa tells us that Rosh Hashanah is a place which is 10 by 4, and the Brisa concludes by saying, Zoyi Rosh Hashanah, this, Zui, this, only this, is Rosh Hashanah. What is the Brisa coming to exclude? What is the Brisa coming to teach us with these words? Limute mai, says the Gemara, Limute, coming to exclude the following case. Limute, the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that even an area which is enclosed with merely 2 mechitzas already has a status of Rosh Hashanah. And therefore the Brisa excludes that. It says no, 2 mechitzas don't create a Rosh Hashanah. You need more than 2 mechitzas. As the Gemara will explain. Limute Hoder Rabbi Yehuda, the Sanya Yosel Ken Rabbi Yehuda, base bottom, one has 2 bottom on both, situated on 2 sides of Rosh Hashanah. So the area between these 2 bottom is surrounded by 2 mechitzas. Therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it has a status of Rosh Hashanah, and one may carry within that area, provided that he makes an additional symbolic enclosure. This is a din d'Rabbanan, as we will learn in Mesechus Eruvin. He makes a lechi, which is a side post, lechi mikan. He puts a side post on both sides of this area. He creates a cross beam on both sides of this area, going from across the Rosh Hashanah. And in that case, he's permitted to carry the even d'Rabbanan. He can carry in between this enclosure. Why? Because 2 mechitzas create a Rosh Hashanah. He merely has to complete it by putting a lechi and a kair there. on each side, which is a din d'Rabbanan to permit carrying with Rabbanan. But that's based on the fact that in our Torah it's Rishus HaYachid. It's only because it has a legal status of Rishus HaYachid. Now, the Rabbanan instructed to add this symbolic enclosure to allow even carrying with Rabbanan. But were it not for the fact that it had a legal status of Rishus HaYachid, midaraisa, in no way would a lechi and curry permit carrying. So, bottom line is, according to Yehuda, 2 mechitzas create Rishus HaYachid. Amr lois, the Chacham challenged that no, ein ma'avin Rishus HaRabim bekach. One may not alter and correct the Rishus HaRabim by merely placing this lechi and kaira on a place which is merely surrounded by 2 mechitzas. This is Rishus HaRabim. Rishus HaRabim is not corrected, is not completed by these symbolic enclosures. We first require it to be a Rishus HaYachid Natur. It needs to be surrounded by mechitzas. And only then can you add a lechi and a kaira, a crossbeam or a side post to allow carrying the Rabbanan. So we see that the Rabbanan hold that 2 mechitzas are not sufficient to create a Rishus HaYachid. So that's what the Brisa means. Only an area which is fully enclosed by mechitzas is considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. La fuki, to exclude from Rabbi Yehuda Shita. Says the Gemara, okay, we understand why the Brisa says Zohi Rishus HaRabim. Zohi Rishus HaYachid. But why does the Brisa add the word Gemura? Zui Rishus HaYachid Gemura. What is the word Gemura coming to teach us? If Amai Kar Le Gemura, says the Gemara, the Brisa is coming to teach you an additional Chiddush. Perhaps you would say that the Rabbanan only regard this area which is enclosed by 2 mechitzas, they regard it as a Rishus HaRabim only l'chumra, that they don't allow one to carry there. It's considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. However, is it really considered to be a Rishus HaRabim, even l'kula, regarding leniencies? Can one transfer an item from this enclosed area to the rest of the street, which is a real Rishus HaRabim? Do you really consider this to be a full-fledged, bona fide Rishus HaRabim to even allow transferring from within this enclosure to the real Rishus HaRabim? Or perhaps no. The Rabbanan agree that, technically speaking, this enclosed area is also a Rishus HaYachid, just like Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, one may not transfer from here to Rishus HaRabim. They were merely being machmer. They said that although technically it's Rishus HaYachid, but we're machmer. We made a gzeira that we don't consider it to be a Rishus HaYachid, and therefore one may not carry within this area. You can carry an item 4 arms within the area that's enclosed by 2 mechitzas. Even though technically speaking, we agree with you that it's a Rishus HaYachid min Torah. So perhaps you can entertain such a notion. That's why the Brisa tells you no. Only an area which is Gemura, which is fully enclosed, has a din of Rishus HaYachid. But otherwise, it is not a Rishus HaYachid whatsoever. Whether it's l'chumra, whether it's l'kula, it is not considered to be a Rishus HaYachid, but rather it is a full-fledged Rishus HaRabim. Not only can one not carry within this area 4 amas, but one may actually transfer from within this area over to the real Rishus HaRabim, which has no enclosure whatsoever, because they're both of equal status. Says the Gemara inside, Gemura, why add the word Gemura? Ma'od, perhaps you may suggest, Rabban only disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda, the lo yahav Rishus HaYachid, that they don't consider it to be Rishus HaYachid. Hani mila, it's only l'taltel. They don't allow one to carry within this area. So it's a churma, it's a stringency. Aval Lizroik, but to go to the extent to allow one to throw an item from Rishus HaRabim into this enclosure, perhaps regarding that, Moidule, they would agree to Rabbi Yehuda that technically speaking, this area that's enclosed by 2 mechitzas has a din of Rishus HaYachid that one may not throw from Rishus HaRabim into this area. Kamash Malan, that's why the Brisa stresses, no, only a full enclosed area is a Rishus HaYachid, but an area that's merely enclosed by 2 mechitzas has no status of Rishus HaYachid whatsoever. It is considered to be a full-fledged Rishus HaRabim, even midrabanan, and one may throw an item from Rishus HaRabim into this area. It is not considered to be carrying from Rishus HaYachid. Now, of course, when we speak about the allowance to throw an item within Rishus HaRabim, of course, we're speaking about within 4 amis, because one's certainly not allowed to throw an item at a distance of 4 amis in Rishus HaRabim. Continues the Gemara, Amar Mar, so we learned earlier in the Brisa, Zui Rishus HaRabim. The Brisa tells us, gives us examples of Rishus HaRabim, a highway, a public plaza. This is Rishus HaRabim. What is the Brisa coming to exclude by using these words, Zuhi Rishus HaRabim? L'mu'utei mai, says the Gemara, L'mu'utei idach Rabbi Yehuda. It's coming to exclude the other shita presented By Rabbi Yehuda, this is not as we learned. This Mishnah is regarding Pasei Birois, the halacha which allows them to build boards around the well of water, which was necessary for the Yidden that were Oile Regel to Yerushalayim. They needed the water to feed their animals. Since the well is deep 10 tefachim and has the din of Rishus HaYachid, and that precludes drawing from the well out into the Rishus HaRabim. So how are they going to feed their animals? The Chacham provide a leniency in this case, and they allowed them to build flimsy mechitzos, these boards which were actually pretty narrow, as will be explained in Maseches Eruvin Be'ez Hashem. And this accomplished, this provided the status of a Rishus HaYachid for the area contained within these boards. And now certainly they can draw the water from the Rishus HaYachid out to the surface between these mechitzos, so they can feed their animals, which are situated inside these Pasei Birois. Says Rabbi Yehuda, this not Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Im hoisa derech Rishus Rabim afsekosam. If the derech of Rishus Rabim, the traffic, used the area between the pasim as they walk through, he must divert them off to the side, because the traffic that is traversing through these boards, they nullify the status of the mechitzos. It is no more considered the Rishus HaYachid. It's not necessary. The mechitzos determine the status of the enclosed area, regardless of whether or not there's traffic walking through. Therefore, says the Gemara, our Bryce is coming to exclude Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. This is the Rishus HaRabim, a highway, a public plaza is the Rishus HaRabim, since it's not contained, it's not surrounded with mechitzos, but an area which is contained, which is surrounded by mechitzos and enclosed even by Pasei Birois. That area is a Rishus HaYachid, regardless of whether or not the Rabbim are passing through. Concludes the Gemara of Amai Korle Gemura. Why does the Brisa here use the word Gemura? The Brisa says Zu Rishus HaRabim Gemura. Says the Gemara, indeed, it's not really teaching us anything. It's only I did the Tana Reisha Gemura, since in the Reisha, describing Rishus HaYachid, there the Brisa found it necessary to add the word Gemura to teach us the halacha mentioned earlier. Therefore, Tanarami Seifa Gemura, and the Seifa as well, the Brisa uses this term. So in summary, the Brisa uses the word Zohi La'afuke from Rabbi Yehuda's halacha on two accounts. The Brisa is coming La'afuke from Rabbi Yehuda's shita regarding mechitzos Rishus HaYachid. Rabbi Yehuda holds when there are two mechitzos on two opposite sides of Rishus HaRabim, Rabbi Yehuda holds that constitutes Rishus HaYachid. Chacham say no, that is the Rishus HaRabim, unless it's surrounded by mechitzos. The second thing is regarding the Rishus HaRabim, which is passing through derech Rishus HaRabim mafsekosam, passing through, traversing through these Pasei Birois, through these mechitzos that were erected around the well. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that nullifies the power of the mechitzos. He must divert the traffic around these mechitzos, otherwise they're going to be mevatel the Shem Rishus HaYachid. The Chacham say no, we already have a Rishus HaYachid as a result of these mechitzos. They determine the status, only they do, regardless of whether the traffic is traversing in between them. So apparently it seems that these two things are unrelated, but if you look a bit deeper, they're really based on a very, very similar concept. The Brisa is telling us, La Fuke Lim'uti Rabbi Yehuda. We don't follow Shitas of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even two mechitzos create a Rishus HaYachid. Why? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, what is the definition of Rishus HaYachid? It is an enclosed area, it is an area which the mechitzos divert the Rabbim from there. It is detached from the traffic by way of mechitzos. Therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the Rabbim walk through the mechitzos, there's no mechitzos. They nullify the power of the mechitzos, since the mechitzos are not accomplishing anything. They're not keeping away the traffic. So this area is not detached from the traffic any longer, and therefore it's not a Rishus HaYachid. Similarly, Rabbi Yehuda holds only two mechitzos are required to create a Rishus HaYachid, because even two mechitzos already accomplish a diversion of the traffic. It is not anymore an open flow of traffic. The two mechitzos on both sides divert. They direct the traffic in a specific direction. Therefore, it is not considered to be an ordinary, open-ended, open flow of traffic. It doesn't have the status of a Rishus HaRabim any longer. An area enclosed by two mechitzos is already considered to be detached from the ordinary walkway of Rishus HaRabim, and it has a din of Rishus HaYachid. The Rabban, on the other hand, hold no. Rishus HaYachid is only created through the mechitzos that create a fully enclosed area, a fully detached area. It is not on account of the fact that they divert the traffic. It is because the mechitzos create a containment, which constitutes the Rishus HaYachid. Therefore, according to the Chachamim, once you have that containment, it's irrelevant of whether or not the traffic is coming through. The mechitzos create the contained area. Similarly, according to Rabbanan, 2 mechitzos are not sufficient to create a Rishus HaYachid. You need a fully enclosed area, because it's the mechitzos that will create the Rishus HaYachid, not merely through diversion of traffic. Continues the Gemara. V'lichshav nami midbar. The Brisa tells us that a highway, a plaza, that's a Rishus HaRabim. What about a wilderness? Why doesn't the Mishnah list that as well? The Tanya learned on the Brisa, Ezi Rishus HaRabim, Stratya, the highway, Platya, the plaza, Gedoyla, Umavoyis and Falashin, V'hamidbar. So we see a midbar as well is a Rishus HaRabim. Says the Gemara, it depends at what point in history. Amar Abaye, like Kasha, it's not difficult. Come, Bezman Yisrael, Shurim b'midbar. The Brisa, which considers a midbar, Rishus HaRabim, is when Klal Yisrael were present in the midbar. So the midbar was populated, it was traveled, therefore had a din of Rishus HaRabim. However, our Brisa, Kan Bezman Azmeh, nowadays, where the travelers through the wilderness are few and far in between, and therefore is not considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. Tosfos points out that it appears somewhat from our Gemara that there is a condition for Rishus HaRabim, that there should be Shishim Ribuy, 600,000 people present there, just as was in the Midbar when Klal Yisrael were there. The Rishonim point out, Rashi and Eruvin points out, that Rishus HaRabim needs to be 16 amas wide, as well as containing access to 600,000 people. So in Halakha, it's actually a controversy whether indeed this is a precondition, whether Shishim Ribi is a precondition to constituting a Rishus HaRabim. The Mishnah Berurah brings a whole list of shittos, and it's a machlokes whether or not it is a necessity to determine the status of Rishus HaRabim. Continues the Gemara, Amar. So we learned earlier regarding Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, Im Hoitzi V'Ichnis, B'Shoigeg, if he did it B'Shoigeg, Chayav Chatos, V'Mezid, if he did it deliberately, Onish Kares, V'Niskal. Says the Gemara, what is the Chiddush here? Why does the Brisa need to be so explicit regarding the consequence, regarding the Onshim? We know that already from elsewhere. B'Shoigeg, Chayav Chatos, Pshita. Says the Gemara, V'Mezid, Onish Kares, V'Niskal Tzrichle. Indeed, the Brisa doesn't need to inform you regarding Chatos. We know that from elsewhere. However, the Brisa is coming to teach you a Chiddush, that B'Mezid, Onish Kares, V'Niskal Tzrichle. The Brisa is informing you that regarding Melechas Eitzah, if it's done B'Mezid, the consequence is Kares or Skila. Says the Gemara, Harnami Pshita. That's also Pashit. We all know that already. Says the Gemara, no. Hakamash Malon. The Brisa needs to teach you as follows. Kid Rav, as we learned from Rav. Dama Rav. Matzasi Megillah Storem B'Rav Chia. Rav says, I found a hidden scroll by Rav Chia. Rashi explains that we know there is an Isser, a prohibition to record in writing the Torah Sheba'al Peh. This went on until the time of Rebbe, who suspended this Isser on concern of the fact that the Torah will be forgotten. So, when there was still the prohibition in place, nevertheless, Rashi explains when there was a new halacha relating to the Beis Medrash, and there was a concern that the halacha will be forgotten. So, some would go ahead and record this halacha and not disseminate it in public, but keep it private so that they can refer to it to refresh their memory, so it wouldn't be forgotten. So Rav says, I found one of these scrolls. Matzase Megillas Storim B'Rav Chia. What did it say? V'kosaba Isi ben Yehuda Omer Avos Malachos Mem Chasar Achas. Indeed, there are 39 Avos Malachos Ve'nechai V'Lachas. However, if one transgresses all his malachos, the consequence is only one chiyuv on all of them. Rashi says, apparently, at this point in the Gemara, there is only one Isser on Shabbos. To refrain from malacha on Shabbos is considered to be one entity, one guf avera, regardless of how many different types of malachas he did. Says Gemara, is that true, ain't he? That there is only one chiv on all of them? Vatnan, haven't we learned in the Mishnah? Avis malachas, how many are there? Mem chasar achas, 39, 40 minus 1. We asked the kasha. Minyan alamli, why does the Mishnah need to give us a number? Mishnah already lists us all the malachas, chayrish and zereya. Let's make the number, let's make the calculation on our own. Why does the Mishnah need to give us the tally? Says the Gemara of Yochanan, it is actually a chiddush that the Mishnah is informing us. Shem asan kulan behelam echas. If he committed all these malachas, he did all these averos behelam echas, even with one memory lapse, he forgot that all of them are Asr on Shabbos, and he transgressed all of them with one Helen. Nevertheless, they are separate entities which result in separate consequences. Therefore, the Mishnah needs to go and list us the different malachas and tell us as well the tally. These equal 39, indicating there are 39 separate malachas which carry a separate einish, each one independently. So apparently the halacha is that each one carries a separate einish. So you can't say that they're all fused into one and there's only one einish on all. Ella Ema, you must say that what is the interpretation of this Megillah Storim? There's one of them, we're not sure which one, but there's one of the malachas which don't carry a einish when it is done b'mezid. Therefore, says the Gemara, that explains why our brisa on Amud Aleph needs to tell us that regarding the malacha of Haitzah, of carrying, certainly it carries all the consequences. B'shagig there's a chatos, b'mezid there's karis or skila. V'kamashman, it's coming to teach us, this halacha of Haitzah is mahanach loy mesapkan, is one of those where there is no suffix, there's no uncertainty regarding this malacha. As opposed to the other malachas, where somewhere in between there's a malacha which doesn't carry the einish of karis or skila by mezid. However, our malacha of Haitzah certainly carries that consequence. Says the Gemara Amar Mar, so we learned in the Brisa what constitutes a karmelis. Aval yam, a sea, ubika, an open area with fields, v'istavanis, the area with the benches, v'karmelis. The Gemara later will explain what that means. So these are einon like Rishus HaYachid, but like Rishus HaRabim. They're neither Rishus HaYachid or Rishus HaRabim. They have a din of a karmelis, which is a Rishus HaRabbanim. Says the Gemara, that's so? Ubika, a open area with fields, einon like Rishus HaRabim, like Rishus HaYachid, like Rishus HaRabim. Is that so? But Tanan, haven't we learned in a Mishnah in Maseches Taharos as follows: Habika, an open area with fields, b'maisachama, in the summertime, Rishus HaYachid the Shabbos. There's not much traffic transversing through that, and therefore it has a din of Rishus HaYachid, a private domain regarding the Malacha Haitzah on Shabbos. However, regarding Tumah, it has a din of Rishus HaRabim. Rishus HaRabim the Tumah. What does this mean? Rashi explains that halacha is when we have a suffix, an uncertainty regarding Tumah. So it depends where it took place. If he's uncertain whether he became Tameh in Rishus HaYachid, the halacha is that he's Tameh. If it happened in Rishus HaRabim, then he is Tar. We learn it from the halacha of Saita, where a woman strays from her husband. There's a suffix whether she became Tameh. So halacha is if it took place in a secluded area, then we say that misafek, she's Tameh, she needs to drink the Mei Saita to clear herself. So we learn from there, that is the source of this halacha, that a suffix Tumah in Rishus HaYachid has a din of Tameh, but if it took place in an open area, which is unlike the case of Saita was in a secluded area, but if it's an open area, then the halacha is that a suffix Tumah is Tar. It says the Gemara, a field, a bika, which contains fields. So in the summertime, although it's not really heavily traveled, so it has a din of Rishus HaYachid, nevertheless, since there's a trickling of traffic there, it is not a secluded area, and when there's a suffix Tumah, it has a din of Rishus HaRabim and Sveika Tar. However, Maisak Shamim, in the winter time when there's freshly seeded seeds, people completely avoid this area, and therefore has a full-fledged din of Rishus HaYachid for both lekach or lekach. Regarding Shabbos and Tumah, has din of Rishus HaYachid. Says the Gemara, apparently a bika is not a karmelis. The Mishnah calls it a Rishus HaYachid. So we'll have two terutzim. Amar Ula, lo ilam karmelis havi. Certainly it's a din of a karmelis. If so, why does the Mishnah call it Rishus HaYachid? It's only in relative Rishus HaRabim. V'amai kol Rishus HaYachid lefi she'ein Rishus HaRabim. In relative to Rishus HaRabim, it's not Rishus HaRabim. Therefore, the Mishnah is contrasting it. It's not Rishus HaRabim, therefore it's Rishus HaYachid. But certainly, technically speaking, it's not Rishus HaYachid as well either. It actually is a karmelis. Rav Ashi says, another territory, Rashi Amar, it depends what type of bika. Our brisa earlier is speaking about a bika which is not enclosed. It's not surrounded by mechitzes. Therefore, it's a karmelis. However, that Mishnah is speaking about a bika which is an enclosed area. Could go in the Islam mechitzes. If so, why is it not a Rishus HaYachid? Explains the Gemara. Karfev. This is a large enclosed area, Yosim Beis Hasayim, which is greater than an area of 2 sa. Area of a sa, a Beis sa means an area 50 by 50 amma. So Sayim is double that area, 50 by 100. So an area which is greater than that, which wasn't enclosed for residential purposes, it wasn't attached to a dwelling. In that case, even when it's very big, a kura kurayim, if one should take an item from Rosh Hashanah and throw it into this enclosure, certainly he's chayiv. This is an enclosed area which has a status of Rosh Hashanah in Torah. However, says the Gemara, although min Torah to Rosh Hashanah, my time of machitzahi, ela shemechoseres diyurim, it's lacking dwelling. Therefore, the Rabbanan deemed it like a Carmelist to a certain extent, since it resembles a Rosh Hashanah. It's a large area where there's no inhabitants present. It looks a bit like a Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, the Chachamim did not allow one to carry through this area. You can't carry 4 amas just like a Rosh Hashanah. If so, says Rav Ashi, this indeed is what is being described in the Mishnah and Taris. This indeed is a Rosh Hashanah because it's completely encircled and enclosed with mechitzos. So now in summary, the Mishnah and Taris refers to this place using 2 descriptions which seem somewhat contradictory. It uses the term bika, which implies an open, unenclosed area. It also refers to it as a Rosh Hashanah, which seems to imply that it's an enclosed area. So we have 2 interpretations of this Mishnah. Ula says, let's focus on the word bika. It's an open area. It's unenclosed. It's an open area of fields which have the status of a Carmelis. Why then does the Mishnah refer to it as Rosh Hashanah? It requires reinterpretation. The Mishnah doesn't mean Rosh Hashanah. Rather, the Mishnah is merely contrasting it with Rosh Hashanah. It's not a Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, it's referred to as Rosh Hashanah. But technically speaking, it's really a Carmelis. Rav Ashi chooses to focus on the words Rosh Hashanah. He says that's the accurate description. And evidently we're speaking about a Karfim Shaluk of Ladira, an enclosed area. But since it was intended not for residential purposes, it is compared to a Bika, an open area. So we need to reinterpret the word Bika. Technically speaking, it's really Rosh Hashanah, an enclosed area. But it's merely compared to a Bika in a certain realm, being that the Chacham gave it a din of a Carmelis on account of the fact that it's not Alkav Ladira. But technically speaking, let's focus on the word Rosh Hashanah and reinterpret the word Bika. So Ula focuses on the word Bika, and Rav Ashi focuses on the word Rosh Hashanah. Says the Gemara, Bishleim Rav Ashi. Now we understand why Rav Ashi lo yamakad Ula, why he didn't follow Ula's interpretation, because he chose to focus on the word Rosh Hashanah, which denote an enclosed area. Ella Ula my timer lo yamakad Shmaite. Why indeed did Ula not interpret the Mishnah in accordance with his shita, with his ruling? Who was the one who taught us this halacha about a kafif? It was actually the name Ula, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So why did Ula not choose to interpret the Mishnah in the same way as Rav Ashi? Amar Lach, so Ula counters and says, Idi Islam mechitzos, if you maintain that we're speaking about a place that's enclosed with mechitzos, Bika Karla, why does the Mishnah refer to it as a Bika? Karfeif, it should have said a Karfeif. Bika denotes an open, unenclosed area. Therefore, I prefer my route. Let's focus on Bika and reinterpret the word Rosh Hashanah. Rav Ashi says, no, Rosh Hashanah Tani. Let's focus on the word Rosh Hashanah, which denotes an enclosed area, an area which is surrounded by mechitzos. I must be speaking about a karfeif which is surrounded by mechitzos. However, the word Bika, we need to reinterpret that word. So, in conclusion, it doesn't seem to be any machlekes and halacha here. It's just simply a question of how to interpret the Mishnah and Taris. But certainly, a Bika which is open, which is a place open without any mechitzos, as described in our brisa on the Vavam and Aleph, certainly all agree it has a din of a Carmelis, which is neither a Rosh Hashanah nor a Rosh Hashanah.